For more on Israel's nation-state law, we're joined now by Amos Esael. He's a senior commentator for the Jerusalem Post. And Jeremy Saltan is a Central Committee member of the Jewish Home Party, Bayit Yehudi. Thanks to both of you for joining us. Amos, let me start with you. As we just heard from our correspondent, Israeli Arabs and others are bitterly criticizing this new bill. They say that it is discriminatory, undemocratic, racist, and it supports the development only of Jewish communities. To which you would say what?
I think that this law's actual impact down in the field will be marginal, minimal, if any at all. It's a declaratory law, and for that reason, I think that it should not have been legislated. It just makes people angry, and most notably and regrettably, Israel's Druze community. The Druze, for those who do not know, are Israeli Arabs who speak Arabic and consider themselves Arabs, but are completely loyal to the state of Israel, serving the Israeli army, and unfortunately have also been frequently killed in the service of the Israeli army, and they feel excluded by this law, with or without good reason. That alone, in my view, is reason enough for us to have not legislated this bill.
Jeremy, what do you make of that point, that what this law does is merely formalize a situation that already exists in Israel? I mean, people who support this law deny that it's racist. They say it preserves Israel's cultural heritage and that Israel can be uniquely Jewish and democratic at the same time.
Well, sure. Let's talk a little bit about why it is that we did pass this law, what it is that's actually in there. So everything that's in this is a basic law which gives it constitutional status in Israeli law, either existed in the Declaration of Independence or in existing Israeli laws. What this bill does is say that Israel is the nation state of the Jewish people. It defines our flag, it defines our state symbol, it defines our national anthem, our language, when our Independence Day is, when our Memorial Day is, the connection with the diaspora, the right of return of Jewish immigrants to be able to make what we call aliyah. All of these things already exist within Israeli law. The feeling within the Israeli government was that we wanted to enshrine this within what we consider constitutional law in Israel, which is to give it a basic law status. So there's nothing new in this law, and Amos is definitely correct in that regard. But it was very important for us to make sure that we enshrine this and give this equal footing compared to the other basic laws.
But Jeremy, the fact that it is now enshrined in law, the fact that it has some kind of legal status or basis, does that change anything?
Well, let's talk about a little bit what a basic law is. The first 10 basic laws, what they did is they defined our institutions. Afterwards, we had the two basic laws that are of extreme importance that were passed in 1992 that define what the civil rights and civil liberties are of Israeli citizens. We were very careful when we legislated this basic law to make sure that no individual rights of anybody would be harmed. No Druze, no Christians, no Muslims, nobody. In fact, we even made sure in certain places in the law, such as the language, where you have the issue of the Arabic language, which is of course very important to so many people who are citizens of the state of Israel, and we made sure to put in a clause there saying that this basic law is not meant to harm the status of the language before this basic law was passed into law. So again, I hear what a lot of people are saying in terms of their criticism, but a lot of it is really coming from previous versions of the law. We're not talking about the final law. I think the final law is very balanced. I think it's very fair. And in fact, the original law, which was proposed 3 Knesset terms ago by then Kadima MK Avi Dichter, did so from an opposition party, from a centrist party. This is something that I don't think is all that controversial for a lot of people in Israel.
What about that? Does this law in effect create 2 categories of citizens in Israel? One category, Jewish Israelis, another category, all others?
No, not at all. This kind of criticism that has been voiced by some of Israel's enemies is unfounded. That I totally concede to the people who passed this law, whose passage, as I said, I oppose. It does not create any difference whatsoever between one Israeli and another. What it does say is that as collectives, the Jews of Israel are the nation state to whom the state belongs, as opposed to other alternative collective national identities. That, as an aim, most of us Israelis share. As individual citizens, it does not at all diminish from anyone's civil rights in Israel.
Amos, let me ask you about this other issue that's been mentioned, and that is Arabic, the language. It's been reduced in status, according to many. It now has what's known as special status. It's not an official language anymore. I want you to listen to what one Israeli Arab lawmaker had to say about that. Let's watch.
The nationality bill is a hate crime. They are totally discriminating against the Arab citizens, against the Arab minority, with racist articles, especially those of Jewish settlements, and those articles downgrading the status of the Arabic language.
So, Amos, why change this? You can hear the bitterness there. You can hear the terminology being used.
Yeah, well, this is exactly proof of what I've been saying. Obviously, all that argumentation is unfounded and manipulative, as I've explained previously. But in terms of the status of the Arab language, I think one of the most respectable things about the way Israel was designed by its founders was the way they treated the Arab language, making it a fully official language with which one can, for instance, address the Israeli parliament or speak in Israel's name in international forums. Now, the bill also says that it will not harm any of these implications, which makes one wonder, if it ain't broke, why fix it?
Jeremy, we're also hearing a lot of criticism from Arab states in the Middle East about this new law, but isn't it a little bit hypocritical on the part of Arab states to complain about this law when they have theocracies which in fact entrench the distinctly Islamic character of their countries?
Yeah, indeed. You know, I know that Iran defines itself as Islamic State. I know that also Egypt has a lot of aspects of Islam that are instituted within what they define as their basis for a state. One of the important things that I don't think really gets enough play is that when we're talking about the nation state of the Jewish people here, there's no religious aspect to this bill. There's no religious commitments that are being put in this. You know, you mentioned that I'm a central committee member of the Beit Yehudi party. Within my district, I live in Mevaseret Zion, where I chair the local branch, and next door to me is Abu Ghosh, which is an Arab village. We have party members that are supporters of mine that live in this Arab village next to me, and I asked them, I said, guys, I hear all this stuff in the news. I want to ask you, you're my constituents, and of course I'm talking about Muslim Arabs here, I'm not talking about Druze or Christian, and they say that they really do not have any issue with this law. And they say in general, when they see the people who do have issues with the law, it usually goes along the lines of the coalition and the opposition. And then they go out and point how, as you said in your question, that the neighboring states that we have, the way that they view the rights of the majority, the way that they do not have any rights that are given to the minority anywhere close to the state of Israel, which we consider to be the only true democracy in the Middle East. Again, this is stuff coming from my neighbors who are Muslim Arabs in Abu Ghosh, and they're pretty much telling me that they don't have an issue with this law. So again, when people go ahead and tell me that they have issues, I ask them to please read the final version of the bill,
right,
the law that was actually passed. I ask them to tell me what exactly it is that they have an issue with.
Amos, of course, many people are raising questions over why this law was passed. There was a very powerful piece published in the New York Times, in the opinion section of the New York Times, by the Israeli philosopher Omri Bohem, and he said in that piece, and I'm quoting here, he said, "The law's primary function is to build a formal foundation for Israel's annexation of the West Bank and for a Jewish state to stretch over the whole of Palestine. Late last year, Mr. Netanyahu's hard-right Likud party had called for the application of Israeli law and sovereignty in all liberated areas of settlement in the West Bank." Is this the formal end of the two-state solution? What do you make of what Omri Bohema to say?
I don't see where he takes this information from. It's a very sweeping generalization with no factual support that I'm aware of. If indeed a future Israeli government would want to annex the West Bank, say 100 years from now, that kind of effort will neither rise nor fall on what this or that law declares. It will rise or fall on the demographics down in the field. And for anyone to think that such declaratory laws will affect the way the borders will be drawn in the future is naive, in my view. And to suggest that Netanyahu did this because of that, it simply doesn't work chronologically. The law was initiated last decade by people not at all from Netanyahu's party. That's not what this is about.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks to both of you for joining us. We are going to take a break. Next, we'll speak with a Palestinian politician and academic about this new law and its impact on Palestinian-Israeli relations. Stay with us. You're watching The Heat.